because He lives. I am blessed. Are you blessed? I am blessed. I am blessed every day that I live. I am blessed. When I wake up in the morning, I lay my head to rest. I am blessed. I am blessed. I am blessed. I am blessed. Every day that I live, I am blessed. When I wake up in the morning, till I lay my head to rest, I am blessed. I am blessed. I am blessed. I am blessed. Every day that I live, I am blessed. When I wake up in the morning, till I lay my head to rest, I am blessed. I am blessed. I am blessed. Every day that I live, I am blessed. When I wake up in the morning, till I lay my head to rest, I am blessed. I am blessed.
say that you're able to be in church. I guess he thought it was going to attack me. I will say that I am grateful for all your testimonies, but one really sparked really about what today's lesson is about. We're studying in Daniel, and Brother Fred just kind of lined out what Daniel was all about in his testimony when he was talking about how you treat others, not how they treat you, but how you want to be treated. And you pray for those that despitefully use you. You're praying for your enemies. You're not trying to curse them. You're not trying to wish bad on them. You're wanting God to touch them. You're wanting God to bless them. You know, that is so different than the world that we live in today. And Daniel was really one of those people that he was a unique character, along with the other three that with him, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Now, those were their slave names. You know, it was Mishael, Hananiah, and what was the last one? Azariah was Abednego. So that that was their Jewish names, or their Israel names, their Israelite names. And then when they were held captive, taken over, they gave them new names, including Daniel. His was Belteshazzar. Now, I just want to give you an idea of what Daniel and his group went through. When they came and claimed these young men, and they were between the ages of Gabe and Liam here, when they collected them, they didn't like them to be too old. They wanted them young. And the first thing they did is they took them into the king's court and made sure that they could have no more children. They removed their body parts and then put them through a training of 3 years. That's just to let you know just how cruel and ruthless these men were. They tried to indoctrinate them the best they could, and they wanted to change them forever. You know, they will never be the same. And if you can remember in the book of Daniel, Daniel was actually good to his captors. They even sought favor with him. You know, I don't know about you, but somebody gelded me like a pony or, a farm animal, I don't think I'd be too happy with them. But here Daniel and his group, they treat them well. They have a good rapport. They were held down and stripped of everything they had, all their knowledge. They even took away their language from them if they could. They wanted them to learn their language, their way of doing things, their education, their history. They were trying to wipe out all the vestiges that they had grown up with. And for the Jewish people, it was the Bible, it was God. The Old Testament was something that was beat into them. Of course, Daniel wasn't a part of it that time. They only had the Torah, the first 5 books. But they would remember it. By the time they were 12 years old, they would have it memorized. So they couldn't take it out of their head. It was in there. They couldn't take it out. So let's start looking at Daniel and the things they went through. In Daniel chapter 1, verses 1 through 6. In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, came Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, unto Jerusalem, and besieged. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim king of Judah into his hand, with part of the vessels of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. And he brought the vessels unto the treasure house of his God. And the king spake unto Ashpenaz, the master of the eunuchs, that he should bring certain of the children of Israel, and of the king's seed, and of the princes, children, in whom was no blemish, but well favored, and skillful in all wisdom, all cunning, in knowledge and understanding, science, and such as had ability in them to stand in the king's palace, and whom they might teach the learning and the tongue of the Chaldeans. And the king appointed them a daily provision of the king's meat and of the wine which he drank. So nourished them 3 years, that at the end thereof they might stand before the king. Now among these were the children of Judah, Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So there we get the 3 years that they were in training. And the prince of the captain of the eunuchs is the one that took hold of them, and he made them like them. You never hear about Daniel's children because he never had any. They made them like them. They put them in slavery. Would you say that was God's will for them? God is in control, isn't he? Yeah. Yeah, they bared the sins of their nation. Yeah, they bared the sins of their nation. Yeah. So it was God's will that they were captured and basically tortured and treated in this way. Do you ever wonder why God's will would be a hard thing to follow? Yes. He stayed. That's right. Right. Yes. 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 Yeah. You know, what made the difference with Daniel, Mishael, Hananiah, and Azrael was the difference that they did not look at their situation as trouble. Right. They looked at it as opportunity. How many of us get in trouble and we think, "Oh, why did I get into this?" Not what can I process out of this? You know, what can I gain out of this? I think if we took that attitude like they did when those tough times came through, we might come through just like they did, in favor and honor. You know, we're the ones that make another talent whenever we go through those trials with an attitude that says, "I'm going to make the best of this," not "this is the worst thing that could have happened to me." Yeah, I think it was Bar Jesus, or yeah, one of those guys. Yeah. Right. Yes. Right. Yes. Yes. That is very true. Handicapped. You know, there are people that are handicapped. Their attitude is oh yeah, they took plenty. Yes. That's right. Yeah, they kind of gave in. Yeah. Yes, that is absolutely true. Let's look at the next two verses, 7 and 8. Daniel chapter 1, verses 7 and 8. Unto whom the prince of the eunuchs gave names, for he gave unto Daniel the name of Belteshazzar, and to Hananiah Shadrach, and to um, Mishael, and to Azariah Abednego. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with the portion of the king's meat, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the prince of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. I wanted to speak specifically about what Daniel was trying to say here. We have rules right now, don't we? Don't we have a speed limit? How many of us broke it getting here? Yeah. When it says 35, and we're going 40, there's laws. Now, there's other laws, too, that says thou shalt not kill. Do we take that one a little stronger? Oh, well, why? Why? Punishment. And this is one of the reasons that I think that Daniel made headway with that prince of the eunuchs, is that he held his position from a place of authority. He said, God does not want me to do this. Not just, I don't want to do this. God doesn't want me to do this. God doesn't want me to do this. And I think that is an important distinction. The world we live in today is a land of rules, but those rules have no authority behind them. How many riots were there during COVID? Riots. But there's only one you hear about in the news, January 6th. How many other riots were over there? Portland had what was called the Chaz zone, autonomous zone. It's the I forgot it's something like the People's Liberated Autonomous Zone. It named Chaz. It's how are they named it? Citizens. Yeah, but they took over the city of Portland for 100 days. They tried to burn down the police station every day. Brick building, so it was a little harder to do. But they still tried. Did you hear anything about it in the news? No. Yes, in droves. The highest commodity in Oregon and Portland at that time, specifically Portland, the most valuable commodity to find was a U-Haul. You could not find them, and they wouldn't bring them back. You couldn't find them. You could try to buy one for $400 for a day. Couldn't find it. That shows how many people were moving out of that area. But I really wanted to talk about authority. That's how Daniel made his difference with that prince of the eunuchs, is he came from a place of authority. And I think that is something that is lacking in our world today. They follow laws not because God said. They follow laws because some bill said, some man said, some police officer said, somewhere else. Their authority was not from God. Why should you treat each other good? Because God said so.
And I think Daniel operated in an authority position. But the phrase that to me stands out every time I read Daniel purposed in his purpose.
Yeah.
It's all what you make up your mind.
Yes.
You're going to do and you're not going to.
Yes. And what was the reason he would not defile himself, that he might not defile himself because of God. He used God as his authority. He didn't use the princes, he didn't use the King Nebuchadnezzar. He didn't use the eunuch prince. He didn't use none of that. He used God. He stood from authority of God.
He didn't purpose in his heart to follow the king.
That's right.
Purpose in his heart that he was not going to let anything happen to his relationship with God.
That's it. That's it. And that's what's missing in our world today. They're missing. Yes. They're missing that relationship with God that they need. That is where your authority comes from. That's where the power and authority of God comes from, is from the relationship that you have with God. If you purpose in your heart, like Daniel did, for that you're gonna please God rather than man, you'll make different decisions in your life. Every choice you make will be a different choice. It will not be one of my choice. It will be, what does God want for me? That's a whole different position. And I think that's the main reason these young men were blessed the way they were, because they purposed in their heart and said, we're going to follow what God says. And I think Daniel was an inspiration to them. And that's the reason that Daniel was listed in here first. It talked mostly about Daniel, but it showed up later in the lives of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. That first challenge that came through, and Daniel said, well, what were we going to do, fellas? He came to those three to say, look, they're going to kill us all. What are we doing? Well, we know what to do. Yeah, we're not going to bow, but we know who to reach out to. We know who has our authority. We know where our authority comes from. Let's go to him and see what happens from there. And that's where that happened. That authority of God came through.
And I wonder if the church, even Woodstock, I wonder if we, as the members, all stood firm together, where would we be today?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And those differences, they may be okay
Yeah.
individually for you, but when it comes to unity, the church is not going to accomplish what God wants it to with this unity.
That's right. That's right. It just won't happen. It just won't happen.
I think I may have been tempted with the three Hebrew boys. I may have said, well, I'll just bow down, but I won't pray and I won't sing and I'll just bow down so they won't notice me.
Right. That's not what they did.
That's not what they thought. That's not what they did, and that's why they were blessed.
Yes, they said, I'm not worshiping any God but my God.
I'm not even giving an indication of that.
Yeah, not even in their diet. You know what I mean? Not even in their diet. Yes, yes. Starting at verse 9. Now God had brought Daniel into favor and tender love with the prince of the eunuchs. And the prince of the eunuchs said unto Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who hath appointed your meat and your drink. For why should he see your faces worse liking than the children which are of your sort? Then shall ye make me endanger my head to the king? Then said Daniel to Melzar, whom the prince of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, prove thy servants, I beseech thee, 10 days, and let them give us pulse to eat and water to drink. Then let our countenance be looked upon before thee, and the countenance of the children that eat of the portion of the king's meat, as thou sayest. Deal with thy servants. So he consented to them in this matter, and proved them 10 days. And at the end of 10 days, their countenance appeared fairer and fatter in flesh than all the children which did eat the portion of the king's meat. Thus Melzar took away the portion of their meat and the wine that they should drink, and gave them pulse. Now I think that meat that was talking about for the king's meat, I think that was most likely pork. It was most likely pork, and that was flat against what God's word said to them for them to eat. So they knew not to touch it. So when Daniel came to Melzar about it, I think he came to him in a frightful way. Look, I can't eat this. I cannot eat this. It is punishment from my God if I eat this. You know, if you're sincere with someone, they tend to be favorable to you. When you're honest with them, when you're straightforward with them. If your communications with someone is always one that is honest, above board, you get noticed. Your best friend is not the friend that will lie to you when you put something on and you ask, how is this? That's not your friend if they're going to lie to you. The friend is the one that's going to say, maybe you should find something else. Isn't that true? Yeah, the one that always tells you the truth is the one you really want to listen to. And that's the way Daniel was talking to this man, Melzar. He was telling him the truth all the time. He was always straight with him. He said, look, I can't eat this. This is punishment from my God if I eat this. Yes, yes. That is something else that I was going to bring up in here. Their test of faith. Our God is a big enough God that he can pretty much pass any test you find for him. But put them under the test. Be willing to take the test. See, that's what bothers me with unbelievers today. They want to say there is no chance that there's ever a God. Put them to the test and then follow your results. If your test says that there is a God, maybe you should change your opinion. Maybe you should think about that. But they cannot imagine a world with a God in it. Because if there's a God in the world, that means their sins are accountable. There's punishment that is real. So their minds just cannot grasp that someone else has the authority over them. It's not that they don't see the proof. They don't want to see it. The Bible calls it, they are willfully ignorant. Willfully ignorant. Not just ignorant. Willfully ignorant. There is situations where that you will become a Christian. A battlefield and a haunted house. Either one will work. When bullets are flying your way, you will find your God really fast. Yes, and when there is stuff going on around you that you have no scientific proof or evidence of, you'll change your mind about spirits being around. You'll find God. You'll find God. And I think that's what that test of faith was. Test us. See how it goes. Let's try it for 10 days. Now remember, they were with him for 3 years. 10 days wouldn't have been a drop in the bucket for 3 years. So if he looked that much better in 10 days, no wonder he took it away. Maybe we should be taking it away from everybody else. I think those other guys just like that wine a little too much for them to take it away. And they were found in favor. Attitude will take you a long way. Attitude will take you a long way. If you have a favorable attitude, no matter the situation, people notice. If you're the one, I know I'm going to relate this to a Disney film. I might get in trouble, but we're going to do it anyway. You guys know who Winnie the Pooh is? Isn't he always kind of upbeat? Winnie the Pooh and Piglet, they're the happy-go-lucky, you know what I mean? We'll go after it. Oh, we got a trouble. We're going to go through it. We're going to get it. We're going to go. But as soon as Eeyore shows up, it's always, thanks for noticing me. things go down really fast. Does Eeyore ever do anything for himself? Usually it's done to him, not for him. And that has a lot to do with attitude. Are you not more willing to help someone that is willing to help themselves? through 21. We're going to finish up chapter 1 today. As for these 4 children, God gave them knowledge and skill in all learning and wisdom. And Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. Now at the end of the days that the king had said he should bring them in, then the prince of the eunuchs brought them in before Nebuchadnezzar. And the king communed with them. And among them all was found none like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore stood they before the king. And in all manners of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers that were in all of his realm. And Daniel continued even unto the first year of King Cyrus. That's what Brother George was talking about. Even when they had a chance to be free, because Nebuchadnezzar had left, Daniel stayed along with the next king that came in. You know, presidents like their own people, right? You know what I mean? They'll switch over the Justice Department. They'll switch over. They do that. And that's exactly what this king was doing. He was switching over people. And Daniel said, do you mind if I stay? You know, and King Cyrus heard the report about him. You know, I'm sure he'd heard about him. Oh, by all means, please stay. The good ones you want to keep. Yeah. He had a good attitude. He was ready to stay. You know what I mean? So he showed favor. So what did God do with them? He gave them wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. How many of us wish we had more wisdom, knowledge, and understanding? Do you ever get enough wisdom, knowledge, and understanding? No, you never do. You never do. But I can let you in on a secret. We serve a God who already has it, if we're willing to listen to him. If we're willing to listen to him. Yeah. And I love how in there it gave us a little foreshadowing of Daniel. And in there in the end of chapter, verse 17, it says, and learning and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. It said that at the very end of verse 17 about Daniel. So we get a little foreshadow of what Daniel is going to be expected to do. I need to give a little homework to my AV team back there. I need them to find the Nebuchadnezzar statue. Yeah, I need to. All right, we need a picture of that for next week, because that's where we're going into. We're going into the statue of Nebuchadnezzar and how that is foreshadowing. Daniel is really, really a prophetic book. It is really prophetic. It's not just historical, but we see the attitude has a lot to do with where those visions and dreams come from. You know, if you don't have favor, will anybody really listen to you even if you know it? Yeah, that's true. If you remember, there was a movie that came out not too long ago about Hidden Figures was the name of the movie. And it was about the supercomputers and how that they had to calculate the numbers for re-entry from the space program. Now, at this time, race relations were not the best in America. They were under Jim Crow law. It was a really bad situation. Yeah. And this young black woman had the knowledge to calculate those numbers like no other. And she figured out why they kept missing their landing zones. She was also a Bible student, Christian lady, been brought up in the church all her life. And because her numbers were so strong, she remembered something in her Bible where it said that the sun had stopped for 2 separate times. And it gave specific times in the Bible how long the sun stood still. Well, she plugged those numbers in to her calculations of the trajectory for the landing of the space shuttle. And she was right on the money every time she added those two figures from the Bible in there. The two figures of the sun standing still. That makes a difference when you're in the atmosphere outside of Earth and dealing with the rotation of the planets and stars. So that's how those numbers mattered, because the sun stood still for two occasions. She put them in, the numbers landed right every time. Well, the man that was above her, that evil white man that was above her, would not give her credit for it. He would erase her name and put his name. Eventually, he was found out. The astronauts themselves called up and asked for her specifically to ask her if the numbers matched up. And because they called her by name, she is now well known for how hard of work that she put in and the dedication that she put into the space station. She even has a building named after her in Kennedy. That just goes to show that God, when you have a positive attitude and you put in the work, God will show you favor. No matter what time it is, no matter what kind of era it is, God will still show out and show up for his people. And he sure did for her. She is still known for those figures, those hidden figures of the two times the sun was held up in the Bible to give accurate re-entry for the space shuttle. They have to give honor to God. That's right. Yeah, that's right. It is amazing, isn't it? You know what? Another thing that amazes me, how they still deny God. You can follow a rock layer from here to England to Europe, even parts of Africa, showing that we were all one place at one time. I mean, you can follow it. And it's in exact orders. They still do not believe that the world was destroyed by a flood. And their first question is, where's all the water? Well, you had to cross it to get to it. You remember that big ocean you crossed? That's full of water. But they still deny God. It's amazing. It's amazing to me that the unbelief that they're willing to have when there's so much evidence to prove it. Just a small point. The Big Bang Theory, no one wanted to touch. No serious scientist. There's no way that everything started from one point. Why? Because that means that matter had to be made outside of space, time, and matter. Something other than matter created matter. That's why they didn't want to touch it. They said that's impossible. But then they look at us and say, well, God is impossible. You see the contradiction? Yes. Yes. See, we believe in the beginning God. They believe in the beginning dirt. You see what I mean now about they say, well, it couldn't have happened, without matter. So in the beginning God, in the beginning dirt. I think we got it right. I think we got it right. But I'm not willing to try it the other way. The punishment is too great. The punishment is too great. Anybody else? Any last comments from anyone? Yes. right. Yeah. Yeah. Yes. Yes. There's a giant combination to put us right where we are. If the Earth was 2 inches bigger or 2 inches smaller, we wouldn't be here. If the magnetosphere that circles the Earth, if it was a little bit stronger or a little bit weaker, we wouldn't be here. If the temperature was 5 degrees higher or 5 degrees lower than what it is right where on our climate, we wouldn't be here. There is so many things that would eliminate life. If there wasn't as much oxygen in our atmosphere as there was, we wouldn't be here. If there wasn't enough nitrogen, we wouldn't be here. There's so many, every one is a dial that you have to turn to tune it just right. And God has tuned every one of them. And we're not talking about one or two. I think they said it was 21 with, no, I'm sorry, a 3 with 21 zeros behind it. So a 3 with 21 zeros. And that's the odds of us being here. 1 to a 3 with 21 zeros behind it. Yeah, like a Googleplex or something like it's something wild. It is out there. Greater number than we can think. Yeah. And God made sure it happened to every one of us. They can keep looking for life out there. I don't think they're going to find it because I think God made it right here. It was that exact. Yeah. Well, I guess we need to go ahead and close our service up. Any last words? Any other comments? Sir? Pulse? Pulse was vegetables. Right. Yeah. You would call it a salad. You'd call it a salad. Yeah. Anybody else? No? All right. Well, let's stand and we'll close out in prayer. Remember those people that we were praying for. Remember those ones. And remember those lost loved ones also. They need to hear a message that brings them closer to God. Let's be those instruments.